Now, the game that I've been playing for this last week, it is Trails Through Daybreak. I've just been fucking going through this game. I believe last episode I was about 40 to 50 hours in. I'm now 85 hours into the game, so my nights have just been this game. And I pretty much went into it very, very, very comprehensively last week. So I probably won't be going into it as deep this week. The next discussion that I'm going to have that's going to be very deep is probably when I'm done the game. I'll probably go into the story and things like that. Especially because this is probably the first Trails game where I'm actually writing notes the entire time I'm playing. So I have like this long ass Apple Notes doc where like my thoughts throughout the entirety of the game, every single chapter. So it's going to be pretty cool if I can reference that if I need to talk about certain moments or not. But the game I'm still loving, and the more I play it, the more I realize this may be my favorite paced Trails game. Now, the reason for that is because Trails games, they have this very rough game loop where you have the moments where you're in the town and you get to speak to people. They have the moments where you have a lot of cutscenes, the story moments happening, and then you have a lot of moments where you're doing like kind of like the dungeon aspects where you're going in an underground sewers and you have to fight a fuck ton of enemies and get through a lot of enemies, and then you get your next story moment, and that kind of repeats. That's kind of what the rough game loop is. And while I'm okay with it, I enjoy it, and I kind of like that it kind of, you know, breaks apart each of those moments, so like it kind of feels like nice and cohesive overall. There are moments where like you can tell, especially the Cold Steel series, where the dungeon moments are like way too long. Like they'll be going and like you can tell like this was just added just to lengthen the game, which again I don't really have a problem with. It's fine. I level up naturally through it, so I don't have to grind or anything. It's cool, but I would say that like if I was gonna recommend this game series to anyone, that's something that I would bring up and say, hey, by the way, there is this potential negative where there's a lot of long dungeon moments which aren't the most exciting to a lot of people, and that in my opinion was like the main negative of the game if I had to give one, even though to me like these games are like 10 out of 10s in my opinion. And so the reason I'm bringing this point up is I feel like Trails Through Daybreak has removed this negative entirely in a funny way, because the actual game loop of Trails Through Daybreak is the exact same. You have the sections where you're going through towns talking to people, you have the sections where you're getting a bunch of cutscenes and going through story, and you have the sections where you're fighting a bunch of enemies, you're going through underground sewers, you're going through a forest or whatever, and you have to fight a fuck ton of enemies. But I realize because this game actually does have the choice of real-time combat, those moments just don't feel long to me anymore, even though they could be long. Like just yesterday, I had to go through a forest for a quest, and like it was very long. If I had to say real-time amount of minutes, like I don't know, but like it felt like 15 minutes, maybe even 20 minutes of me just going through this forest and just racing through all these fucking enemies and getting to the end of it. And I don't really feel that time at all because it's real time. If it was turn-based, you really do feel every single fucking battle where like every enemy you touch, you go to the turn-based battle, you see the animation, it turns into like 6 enemies, you gotta fight them up, you gotta go through all the turns, you beat them, animation, done. Then you gotta do that for every single fucking enemy. We're in this. You can skip the enemies first of all if you want to. I don't, because I'd never want to grind in the games, and so I just fight all the enemies I meet for the first time. But because it's real time, you just get to like, there's no waste of time of animation. You just get to fight them on the field. If they're weaker, you get to kill them pretty fast. If they're stronger, even if they're strong, you do fight them relatively fast. Like the strongest enemy on the field will probably take like a minute to fight at most, but if you ever fight them in turn-based, it would usually take longer. Like for example, if a bad guy has, I don't know, 20,000 HP. When you're on the field, every hit that I do is doing like 500 HP, 500, 700, 600 HP, and then my charge attack does like 1500 HP. And so after a minute of fighting, they will be dead. But if you take that and put it into turn-based, it takes so much longer because you will have moves that do like 1,000 HP of damage or 1,500, but the fact that you have to wait for every single turn and go through the entire process, like it ends up taking, not only does it take a lot longer to fight the stronger enemies, you take so much more damage. Where in real time, you pretty much never take damage. If you do, it's usually just your main guy, and you can just heal on the field, so it doesn't really matter. Where in turn-based, like they will do AoE moves which will hit everyone. Like you'll have some characters that are very close to death, and then you gotta heal and you gotta wait for your turn to heal and things like that, where in real time, it's just so much faster. And because of this feature where they added real-time battles alongside the turn-based battles, I just think it's entirely removed the negative pacing in my opinion. And so when I'm playing Trails Through Daybreak, I am 85 hours in. It does not feel like that to me at all. Like honestly, like I'm not even like making this shit up. Like I legitimately feel like it has not felt like 85 hours, and there's never been a part of the game where I've been like, oh, I gotta do this dungeon moment now, because like it doesn't feel like that, because it just feels fun. And the more I play it, the more I realize that they clearly took the combat I don't know if mechanics are the right word. They took the combat feel from the East games and put it into this, because like fighting enemies, even to the sound design, the visceral feeling of it, the satisfying nature of it, it really feels like playing an East game. If you ever played an East game, you know that as you go through the field and you're just fucking destroying enemies, it feels very satisfying. And Trails through Daybreak feels exactly the same when you're playing in the real-time mode. So with it being satisfying, with it being real time, I just feel like the negative pacing aspect of the Trails games, where you have to do the dungeons pretty often and they're very long, is just completely gone. And I think the pacing, for me at least, it just has been perfect so far. So that's just something I want to really mention that I felt in Trails through Daybreak. And one more thing that I want to mention, and this is more story based, but I believe I mentioned this last week, where I'm very interested all the time in the Trails games with how technology evolves in the games, where like in the older games they had no cars, they had no bikes, but they had like kind of some primitive airships, and then slowly you got cars, and then slowly you got bikes, and slowly you got computer terminals, and now you have portable terminals, which are just cell phones, and slowly you get more and more and more. And I just realized, especially in Daybreak, and the characters actually mention this a lot too, but the tech is advancing really fucking fast. Like just like recently, like they mentioned cloud technology that they're getting soon. AI is something they have simulations and holograms you can do now, where like you can simulate yourself in a whole new world, like pretty much through like a VR headset or something. They have so much technology coming so fast. It's like making me kind of speculate to where this is going to go, because if you didn't know, the Trails world is a world where it lives in a society where there was an event that took place, I think it was 1200 years ago, something like that, and that event was called the Great Collapse. And what that was is the previous society was way more advanced than we are now. Something happened called the Great Collapse. They all fucking died, and then our society started after that. And so playing these games, I'm wondering, are we going towards another Great Collapse? I feel like the technology is advancing so fast. Like we already have like pretty advanced AIs, especially with the Reverie. Like the entire plot was an AI, and like the world might have been destroyed because of it. Are we getting to the point where we're gonna keep getting more and more advanced, where like the end game is gonna be the technology fucked us over? And you're really seeing this through this game too, because one of the plot points, I'm gonna talk about it really roughly. I won't talk about characters specifically, but one of the plot points is the risk of nukes being invented in the world. Very Oppenheimer-ish, but there's a character that is trying to create nuclear weapons, and the good guys are like, fuck that could destroy the world. And so you're already getting these specific technologies being made that can destroy the world. So I wonder, is the game going to a certain point where it may go into a Great Collapse version 2. I'm not sure if this is the entire plot of what the game has been trying to get to, because I literally mentioned last week that the overall plot of the technology advancing has been like very interesting to me, even though it's not been the main plot. But if that actually bow ties at the end of the Trails games to kind of get to another Great Collapse possibly happening and the heroes trying to stop it, that'd be very fucking cool. And so I can't wait to see how we go deeper into Daybreak and to see how that happens. And also to see exactly how the technology advances, because it's very fun to see how some technologies are advanced and some are not. For example, like one example is they don't have nukes yet, but they have extremely powerful AIs already. They have these computers that can transport you to another world through simulations. But again, they don't have nukes yet. They don't even have like consumer level video cameras yet. Like they have like these little pockets of things where like cars are starting to become a thing, bikes are more common, but we don't have cameras. Like we have some cameras, but they're not consumer level yet. Like it's very funny to see that. Like again, they have AI, but cloud technology is just becoming a thing, which is weird, because if you have AI, like how do you not have cloud technology? Like it doesn't really make sense. Like I feel like they'd be very like interlinked, but like I'm very interested to see how exactly the game keeps on evolving the technology, and whether my theory of it possibly leading to another Great Collapse ever happens in the future. But yeah, that's pretty much all I want to talk about Trails through Daybreak for this week. And maybe by next week I'll be done the game. I'm not sure. Maybe not. I have no idea how long the game is, but I'll be sure to keep updating you guys on my progress on the game.